Is Heung-min Son essential? Well, we're going to find out in today's video, as well as answering all your other questions in this ultimate preview for Game Week 5. And starting off today's video, we are going to talk about the topic of discussion. The main topic of discussion for Game Week 5 is Son essential for this game week. And you have to argue with that Sheffield United at home fixture, it does look like he could be a very explosive asset. Obviously in Game Week 4, move positions to play in this forward kind of role, replacing Richarlison within the side, and it worked wonders for Spurs. Him picking up 3 goals as well in that game and was phenomenal. We all know what a terrific finisher this man is. When he's on that left-hand side though, in that Postecoglou system, there are question marks around whether or not he is as good. We'll come to see this in a few minutes time when I kind of compare the Game Week 1 to 3 to Game Week 4 stats. You'll just see how much more dangerous of an asset this man is when he is playing in that striker position. But as you can see, over the opening couple game weeks, 3 goals, 1.35 XG, 1.19 XA, 28 points scored, and 19.3 points predicted over the next 3 fixtures. Obviously, his XG is always under. Son is just one of those players that massively outperforms this data set. We've seen it from him in the season where he won the Golden Boot. Last season as well, always overperforming his XG because he is just one of those players that is a fantastic natural finisher of the ball. Has just that ability to score from absolutely anywhere and score ridiculously low XG goals and massively break it. So I wouldn't be too worried about his data set. Obviously, for me personally, I'm someone that loves to look at data. But there are certain players that just seem to randomly break the mold because they are too good at the game, and Son is just one of those players where it doesn't quite matter that his underlying data isn't quite cooking up to kind of my regular standards for players I would be eyeing up, but he's just one of those players, like I said, natural finisher, has just got that extra bit of ability about him. I think as well, Spurs are cooking as well under Ange, looking really, really fluid. James Maddison's looking brilliant. Solomon as well on that left-hand side, replacing Son, was excellent during that game. Not 100% sure about Kulusevski and his role. Obviously, we've spoke about the issues that Richarlison is having as well, but it does look like they've potentially found a replacement in Son as well. The fixtures, that is a big talking point. Obviously, that Game Week 5 fixture is absolutely delicious. Sheffield United at home is a terrific fixture, a team that I'm going to be targeting throughout the season. Regardless of whether or not they start to pick up some positive results, their data that they're picking up defensively is woeful. They don't look very good going forward either, so I definitely think they're a team that I want to be targeting from an attacking and defensive perspective as well. At home is honestly, like I said, it's a fantastic fixture. We need to at least have 1 or 2 Spurs assets for that game week, I would say. In terms of the longer fixtures, Game Week 6 and 7 are a little bit more tricky. Arsenal away is obviously going to be a heated game. It's the North London derby. Absolutely anything could happen in these derby games. Son might be a player that could potentially pick up in that game, but it's just one of them. And then Liverpool at home. I don't think Liverpool have started the season great. They're still trying to figure out what they want to be this season, and there's a lot of question marks about who their kind of talismans are, who their kind of key players are, what system works best for certain players. Does Trent work in midfield? There's lots of question marks still around that Liverpool team. So I don't think it's the worst 2 fixtures they could have had in here. If City was in there, I definitely think Son would be a massive avoid. But Arsenal haven't looked great in this new system. Liverpool are still finding their feet as well with the new players and their new system. So I definitely think there is room for this Spurs side that have settled extremely well under Ange to potentially hold Son throughout these fixtures as well. Because, you know, he might pick up an attack in return. Like I said, he's a brilliant finisher and could still outperform kind of what is expected of him in terms of expected points over this time period. If you look after that as well, they play Luton, great fixture, and then Fulham, who have the highest XG conceded at the moment. We saw how woeful they were against Manchester City, and with Spurs looking so fluid at times and so, you know, just elegant in the way that they play football, I definitely think those 2 fixtures post it are, again, fixtures we want to be taking on board, to be honest. Playing 2 of the newly promoted clubs within the next 4 game weeks as well is a massive, massive plus. Obviously, another difficult kind of point around Son is that price point. 9.1 million is going to be a little bit difficult for people to potentially get him in. He's not around the 8 or the 7.5 where we already have a lot of players. Unless you have Salah, then maybe that offers itself as the perfect downgrade opportunity. I don't think Salah is an asset that I personally would be like 100% gagging to sell, because he is still returning and has a really good long record of returning points. But he just isn't quite living up to that 12.5 million price tag for me. We don't know whether or not he's going to be able to keep penalties as well after missing his last one. So I definitely think there is a shout that Son potentially could be taking the mantle as the next kind of second-ish premium within our side. Something I wanted to kind of highlight as well. This is Son's data from game week 1 to 3 on the left-hand side, and then game week 4 on its own. As you can see, there is a lot of blues in the column for kind of plus data to go with Son's kind of incredible data that he's been putting up. All for game week 4. Not too much for game weeks 1 to 3. As you can see, this position change has massively impacted his kind of attacking potential. As you can see on here, shots exactly the same. So from 1 to 3, 5 shots. One game alone, 5 shots. Whether or not that is Burnley being bad, that is something to potentially consider, because they've not looked great. Or is it this change of position has made Son such a better asset? More shots on target, more shots in the box as well, more XG accumulated, and obviously more goals. As you can see, his expected assists have kind of fallen away, but you know, that's kind of what we would be expecting. Obviously, if he's putting chances on the left-hand side for players like Richarlison, that you know, he's going to pick up a lot of expected data. But when he's the man that is expected to then go and score the goals, replacing Richarlison, then obviously there is going to be an increase in expected data for his goals and a decrease in his data for expected assists and attempted assists, as you can see here. So the expected kind of data around his assists is going down, but his finishing is going up, and that is what we want to see, because you're always going to get more points for scoring goals. If both could go up, that would be absolutely amazing, but they've kind of just swapped positions, and with Son being such a terrific forward and this positional change, I definitely think that is the data that I want to be seeing. This really good data. But like I said, there is kind of points to be considered whether or not Burnley are just extremely bad, or this change in position is going to make Son a better option. That is something definitely to consider. You know, Burnley haven't started the season great, like their return to the Premier League. So I definitely think that is a point to be considered if you are potentially considering buying Son for this game week. Another point that has kind of been raised over the past couple of days with the deadline edition of Johnson from Nottingham Forest, whether or not he is going to play up front, or whether or not it is going to be Son who remains in that position. My only thing that I'm going to say on that is Johnson has predominantly been playing on the right-hand side for Nottingham Forest and for the national team for Wales as well. So I don't think he is going to come into this squad and replace Son as the main forward, to be honest. I just can't quite see that happening, to be honest. I think they're going to keep with Son. It obviously worked terrifically well against Burnley, picking up 3 goals, all the points, all the good stuff that we expect. So I definitely think Johnson is going to be more of competition for Kulusevski, as he isn't quite the model that Ange Postecoglou likes to regularly go for with his kind of wingers, whereas Johnson kind of fits that profile a little bit more as well. And I don't think he's up to the class levels of Son, of Kulusevski either. So I definitely think it is going to be one of them where he will be slowly integrated into that team, and maybe over the next few weeks we kind of get a better idea of what position he is going to be playing. But my overall thoughts on Son to kind of finish up, if you are looking for a Spurs player, I think if you have Maddison, I don't think it is worth going for the double up. I think stick with Maddison. He is a great asset on his own. He is going to tick over very nicely. I think he has a little bit less downside to Son. I think Son has that ability to go into games and potentially get hat-tricks and mega hauls, whereas I feel Maddison is one of those players where he's going to put 1 goal, 1 assist per game. But, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. It's still getting points into our team. He's still got the same exact fixtures, and I feel he is a 90-minute man, whereas with Son playing in this forward position, we might see, like I said, Johnson maybe come up front, maybe a little bit of Richarlison there as well, maybe moves back out onto the left. There is always that possibility. Maybe if Solomon picks up an injury and they have to play Son out wide, there is that still kind of looming doubt. hanging over Son. Whereas with Maddison, you do feel he is much more of a settled asset, very settled in his position on free kicks and corners as well, which is always a fantastic asset to have in this game. So I think if you've got Maddison, stick with him. Don't make the switch to Son. Stick with Maddison. But if you have no Spurs asset, I definitely think Son is the one that I would be going for. Just he's got that higher upside over James Maddison with his kind of acute acquired finishing, as you would say. But yeah, that was the Son debate. Let me know what you think of it down in the comment section below. If you've got any questions about whether or not you should be bringing Son into your team, let me know in the comments section. And let's move on to our next talking point, in our Game Week 5 preview. It was announced this week that there is going to be a double game week for Burnley and Luton, replacing their Game Week 2 game, which was postponed due to Luton's pitch not quite being at the standard it needed to be. So yeah, it's gone into double game week 7. And this is the two fixtures. I have already made a video around this. If you want to kind of see a more in-depth discussion, please go and check it out. I'll leave an eye above me here, there, or wherever it is, and you can go and check out that video. We do have a little bit more of an in-depth discussion, but I wanted to include it in today's preview as it might impact your planning for Game Week 5. It's definitely going to impact mine, as we will come on to talk about with my team planning a little bit later in today's video. I think with this double game week, there is going to be only one team that I'm potentially going to be looking to target, and that is Luton. Everton and Burnley is a great double game week. Obviously, the assets aren't amazing and we don't have a plethora of them to choose from, but there are some good ones that we will come on to talk about in a minute. I definitely think for this double game week as a kind of 1 week punt will definitely be okay as a very short term punt. Burnley for me, that isn't a great double. The Luton fixture, yeah, that game could go absolutely either way. We don't know about that. And Newcastle away, it's not quite there as well. And with Burnley's fixtures kind of leading up to that as well, Manchester United the week before, Chelsea and Brentford the week after, we're not really going to want to hold these Burnley assets for very long. Whereas if you look at Luton, Fulham and Wolves beforehand, then Tottenham the week after, but then it's Forest the week after that. So there's definitely room to potentially hold or bring these Luton assets in a little bit earlier. So I definitely think they've got the better side of the coin. I've seen some content creators talk about not even potentially bringing in any players for this game week. I think that's kind of acceptable because neither of these teams have been looked good, have they, over the opening couple game weeks. But for me, I always like to target doubles. I always like to pick up players. At least one I think is needed for this double from the Luton side. 2 maybe, but other than that, there's no need to go excessive 3, 4 kind of players. I think 1 at max is probably the best that you can do. Talking about players that you potentially could look to target in this period, these are the 3 that I'm potentially looking at. Obviously, Kabore is already kind of a popular asset that a lot of people have. I think if he was on a wild card, I'd probably go Bell. He's played 90 minutes in every single match, and he's just, dirt cheap as well, so just can easily rotate in and out. And, you get a nice little double game week. The only kind of players that I'm potentially considering are Morris from Luton. I've said it in every video. It's Clinton Morris season, ladies and gentlemen, to be honest. He's the player that I'm potentially looking to bring into my side. Fulham, Wolves, and then Everton and Burnley, like I said. 1 goal, 1 assist, good XG, okay XA, leading the way amongst all these players. 5.5 million for a player who plays every single minute and is on penalties and has a double game week with extremely nice fixtures. That to me just all makes sense in my head. So that is why I'm potentially considering Carlton Morris as a potential option for this game week and targeting that game week in double game week 7. Moving on to the other player that I have kind of highlighted in the forward position, it is Lyle Foster, a player from Burnley that has started the season quite brightly, has looked good in the opening couple game weeks. As you can see, leading the way on XG over Carlton Morris, 1.29, 2 goals for him as well. Scored against Spurs last weekend. So I definitely think he's an option, but for that extra 0.5 million, you can get yourself a penalty taker with better fixtures. I think that just makes a little bit more sense to me, but he is a potential option if you wanted to kind of go down that route and potentially consider going for Lyle Foster. Obviously, I've seen a few people murmuring about him, but I think with Luton having the better kind of the double, I prefer Morris for that extra 0.5 million and get myself penalties. But I don't think Foster is a bad shout as a 1 week potential differential punt if he continues to put in the data and continues to impress with his performances. The The final player that I have highlighted is Marvelous Nakamba. Again, he's just a 90-minute man, 4.4 million for him. I think if you've got kind of a plain 4.5 million and maybe 1 week you're potentially looking at burning a transfer, that could be an option, but I wouldn't like go out and excessively kind of support that view. If I was looking to get one of the Luton players, it would be Carlton Morris. He would be my top priority. I think if you already have a defender like Kabore or Bell, I don't think they're like bad options either. Maybe something that you can look to do, obviously with Kabore being benched last game week, is potentially look to move to Bell in game week 7. Have yourself a playing 4 million defender for that game week. Get maybe hopefully 1 clean sheet out of that. That'd be nice. If not, 4 points isn't the end of the world if he plays both games and doesn't get a yellow card or doesn't get battered. So I don't think it's the worst kind of suggestion that you potentially could go for. But my number 1 priority is Carlton Morris. He's the man that I'm looking to get into my team. I think obviously last season put up really good numbers in the Championship. If you look at his FB ref stats as well, is leading like kind of the percentile way in a lot of those kind of key metrics as well. So he is definitely a good player on penalties, 90-minute man. I don't think I really need to say too much more about him. Moving on to the next topic of discussion. Again, I've made a video on this one. If you want to go check it out, I'll leave an I here or wherever it is to go and check that out. It is the best Pickford replacements, or Turner or Johnson, if you feel like they're potentially going to be dropped in game week 5. I think they aren't. I think I'm going to try and hopefully hold out until game week 9 and hope that one of them is still playing along that time period. If not though, I am going to have to look for a replacement goalkeeper. And these are the 5 for me that I have outlined that I potentially am looking to target. Leno, Edison, Areola, Martinez and Flecken. Leno for me is one that I wanted to include as I feel it's a good talking point, to be honest, on a player that I'm not like keen on. Obviously he's picked up the points so far. He's the 3rd highest point scorer in the game for goalkeepers, 19 points, but 12 of those did come against Everton, where he was just bombarded with shots. Very lucky to come away with a clean sheet and all those save points and bonuses, but that's what you sometimes get with these 4.5 million goalkeepers. The defense isn't as good. They get absolutely battered, but still come away with games with absolute hauls. It doesn't really make sense, to be honest. As you can see from the XG conceded, 11.2, so, you know, not really good underlying data from a defensive perspective for Fulham. Like I said, that's why I'm potentially looking at bringing Carlton Morris in to target them as well. Only 1 clean sheet over that time period, and that was against Everton, but did get that haul of 12 points in that game. But I don't see him being a consistent long-term point scorer. I think, yes, he's picking up the odd points here and there now, but is probably going to get another haul at some point. But I just can't back a team that is conceding that much expected data, that many goals as well. I just don't think it's worth it. I kind of like to go for the steadier, eddier players, like the 4.5 million goalkeepers who play for a better team. That's why I went for Johnson in my own team as well, because I knew Crystal Palace, since Roy Hodgson's appointment, were one of the best teams for expected goals conceded. But now with Dean Henderson coming in, that has kind of thrown a little bit of a spanner in the works, and that isn't quite like a long-term option that I want to be kind of having in my team, is Johnson, with him potentially kind of having that risk now looming over him of another kind of like England international top quality goalkeeper sat on the bench ready to pounce as soon as he makes a mistake. So yeah, that is something to definitely consider. Moving on to the next goalkeeper, it is Edison, a very much a casual pick at 5.6 million. I don't usually like to go for the premium goalkeepers, especially people like Edison. Yes, the underlying data is really good. Yes, he's picking up clean sheets. Yes, he's got the highest expected points for the next 3 game weeks. But I can't justify it to myself spending that amount of money for a player who's like max ceiling's probably like 7 points per like most game weeks, to be honest. Like, he's going to pick up the clean sheet, yes. But is he going to be able to pick up kind of save points like these other cheaper goalkeepers? No. Is he going to pick up bonus points? No. So for me, you are expecting kind of to get 6 points every single week and bank on the City clean sheet, which is most weeks pretty much nailed. but I think you've got higher upside going for other goalkeepers like the other ones on this list. Moving on to our next one, and it is Areola, the second highest point scorer over the opening couple game weeks. 20 points for him. Really good kind of data as well that he's been putting up. Him and West Ham, as you can see there, XG conceded 5.89, 4.1 million. I think if I had Turner, I would easily just switch to Areola. They've got City away or at home this game week, which isn't the easiest. I'm just going to check that. City at home, it's not the easiest. Then Liverpool away, not great next two fixtures, but for 4.1 million, I don't think you can complain too much if you feel, or we potentially get early team news, that Turner is going to be dropped in game week 5. Moving on to our next one, and a player that I'm definitely considering with Aston Villa's good fixtures around game week 8. He might be on my game week 9 wildcard. It is Emi Martinez, obviously coming back after an injury, had a little price decrease as well as he missed 1 or 2 games. 4.9 million now for him, 6.3% owned, and like I said, it is around the game week 8, game week 9 period that Martinez would be potentially looking to come into my team. Wolves, West Ham, Luton and Nottingham Forest. I know a lot of people do own Matty Cash already, but I think he's going to start to become a rotation risk with the Europa League and kind of Conference League starting to kick into gear, starting to see a little bit more rotation. I don't think he's going to be a full 90-minute man. We might see him maybe drop onto the bench as well. I know he's been terrific, putting up really good data, but I do think his expected minutes are going to start to plummet once European football starts to kick in. And then the final goalkeeper is kind of my preference if I was looking for a goalkeeper this game week, and it is Flecken. Obviously, Brentford as well are one of the best teams over kind of the last 3 years for expected goals data, kind of, and the points that you kind of get for those players. 4.46 for XG conceded over the opening couple game weeks. A really, really solid defence. Great record against top 6 sides as well. 4.5 million. The fixtures are pretty much hit and miss, but if you can get yourself 2 playing goalkeepers, maybe you've got Areola already in your team, then I definitely think Flecken offers that nice little rotation you've got there. Like I said, really good record, have Brentford against top 6 sides, and really good data. Yes, the points are a little bit low at the moment for Martinez and Flecken, but I think over the course of the next few weeks, if they get a game where they like have a mega few saves or pick up some clean sheets and bonus points, they could easily be catching Leno, who I think Fulham are looking extremely in danger this season of potentially getting relegated. They can't keep conceding the amount of chances that they are, so I definitely think it is worth considering switching to one of these other goalkeepers. And finishing up today's video, I thought we would take a look at my team in FPL.team. If you don't use this website, I'll leave a link to it in the description. Great website for helping you build your team and kind of craft transfers and put transfer plans in your mind. So this is currently the team without any transfers at the moment. We've got Turner, Adoji, Estepinian, Chilwell, Maddison, Bruno Fernandes, Saka, Eze, Mbeumo, Jackson, Haaland, and on the bench, Johnson, Henry, Kabore, and Mbama. Definitely some areas of massive improvement needed within this side. There's some players with excellent fixtures. I'm looking at the 2 Spurs boys. I'm looking at Jackson and Chilwell. They have the great fixtures. We've gone with Haaland captain as well, as I just think play it safe for these opening couple game weeks. We've got a really good rank at the moment. I think we're like 95,000. I might be completely wrong there, but I think we're about 95, maybe just in top of, like, just into the 100k. So I want to keep with everyone else at the moment. So going to go with Haaland captain straight off the bat there. But my kind of transfer plans, I already alluded to it a little bit earlier in the video. And it is to do this, to be honest, is we're going to replace Mbama with Morris, who does have Fulham away in this game week. So I'd probably drop Eze and put him at first sub, and that is kind of how our team would look for this game week. That's the only transfer I think I would make. If I didn't bring Morris in, I'd probably roll this week or just wait and see until the press conferences. Obviously it is internationals, there's always going to be random and strange weird injuries that players pick up. Maybe they're a little bit late and delayed. We're all going to be looking at flights for like random South American players, as we always are with these post-international deadlines. So yeah, that is the plan at the current moment, as long as we get no injury news, or, you know, I maybe get cold feet, don't go for Morris. I think I would just roll into game week 6. Into game week 6, the team is looking ridiculously strong, as you can see here. I probably play Eze. That's like, how do I get Eze in here, to be honest? We've also got Rico Henry, so he'd easily replace Adoji. That would be our back 3. I'd probably, this is ballsy, but I'd probably bench Nicholas Jackson against Aston Villa. He is a little bit of a donkey. I'm not 100% convinced. Obviously, Johnson would come in. We're hoping that he's still playing at this point. That team is looking ridiculously strong for that game week. Nicholas Jackson against Villa. Villa have looked extremely good over the opening couple game weeks. Chelsea not quite 100% there. So I think that is the way we would go into game week 6. Whether or not we would potentially make a transfer, I think the only thing that I would maybe look to do in this game week is replace one of Johnson or Turner, but with Johnson having a really good fixture of Fulham at home, I don't think necessarily that is something I'm going to look to do. Maybe one of the Newcastle boys with their fixtures being quite good. Obviously, just loading up my laptop, Newcastle in game week 6 do play Sheffield United, so that is where the considerations would come in. Maybe if Jackson has had another stinker, maybe we bring in Isak here, or maybe if Johnson or potentially Ward have lost their place, we would just go for someone like Nick Pope. I think that would make sense, to be honest. Sheffield United, great fixture, would see me out up until my game week 9 or potentially game week 10 wildcard if I did that. Moving into game week 7, as you can see, the team is looking pretty much full stacked yet again. How we're going to get all these players in, I do not know. Jackson would come in for Eze, and that would be an extremely strong front line. I think we'd probably play Kabore over Estupiñán as well. Hope that he starts to return to first team action. That team then is looking ridiculously strong for game week 7 indeed. Taking advantage of the double game week with 2 players. Morris as well, I wouldn't give him the armband. I know there's kind of been a few people muttering it about, but if he starts to maybe get some goals and Haaland doesn't, I definitely think it becomes a topic of conversation. But I'm just going to stick with the pack early on. Keep Haaland captain every single week. Hope that I'm kind of hovering around the top 200k going into kind of game week 20 and beyond. And then we start to look at where we potentially can find a few differential players. Maybe start to look at differential captains as well if City are deep into the Champions League. So that is kind of the strategy where we'll be at that point. But for now, I think just stick with the pack. If you've got a good rank as well, just stick with the pack. Play the sensible transfers. Don't do anything too stupid and take advantage of this double, because a lot of the content creators are advising against doing that. And I think there is room to be exploited in this double game week, especially with people like Morris or maybe one of the cheap defenders in your teams. That was the ultimate preview for game week 5. If you did enjoy it and want to see more of these, do let me know down in the comment section below. If you have any questions about your team, get them in there as well. Be sure to like as well. It's an extremely hot day in the UK. I don't know if you can tell with like sweat pouring off my head, but it's an extremely hot day in the UK. So that alone, filming in like a sweltering room, deserves a like on its own. But thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen, and enjoy the rest of your day.